What cringe moment did you catch on camera at a wedding? The father of the groom was making his speech and got to a touching part about his wife, mother of the groom, who had passed away recently. I was filming from the back, but I got his sound okay. The thing is, there was a bunch of little kids near me playing quietly until one of them yelled, "God damn it, frick you!" right as the father was tearing up. Nobody seemed to notice, but it was plain as day on the tape, so I had to do a lot of delicate chopping on that one. My great-uncle took over filming at the reception of my parents' wedding, and halfway through it, it cuts to inside of the kitchen, where he's filming and hitting on the waitress getting the cake ready. It's both of my parents' favorite moment of the tape. When my brother got married, I was one of the bridesmaids. It was a super fun wedding, but my sister-in-law, the bride, got tanked during the reception. She threw up in the bathroom at one point. During the part where the bride throws the bouquet, we had to get her up there, hand her the flowers, and just tell her to throw. So I'm in the crowd to catch it, and I'm pretty tall for a girl at 5'10", so I was the tallest there. She drunkenly throws it, and it beelines to my face. Of course, the bouquet was made of succulents. I had cuts under my eye for about a week, and my cousin had the entire thing on camera from a side angle. It looks like a comedy sketch. Also, I didn't get the bouquet because I was too preoccupied with getting hit in the face. My aunt had a camera floating around for anyone to use at her wedding. While my dad was filming, one of the bridesmaids spilled a bottle of red wine on the center table of the room. It knocked a bunch of stuff off the table as well as making the white tablecloth red. Well, my father was facing the wrong way, so when you watch the video, there's a crashing sound, then my father spins around and says very clearly, "Frickin' crap, I missed it," as the bridesmaid is scrambling to stop the chaos. Funniest part of the video by far. Oh, my clip was from my own wedding. We got married in a dear friend's front garden I'd helped put together as a teenager. Just as we got to the vows, you can hear people sniffling, just about to cry, when the telltale sound of an ice cream van starts to build. It gets louder and louder until it abruptly stops. The driver obviously noticed what they were approaching and shut off the music at what was essentially the property line to the next-door neighbor. Silence as they crept by the house. Then, as soon as they hit the next house, full blast again. The "Do Your Ears Hang Low" tune. Everyone burst out laughing. They should have come by 10 minutes later. They would have made a lot of money. That is the most alternately considerate and inconsiderate ice cream driver I've ever heard of. Honestly, if it wasn't the reception, I can't think of any wedding I've been to that wouldn't have benefited from an ice cream truck right after the service. You know, when you're waiting for the bride and groom to get their first photos in. My sister-in-law was trying to use the wedding photographer as a personal photographer or something to take photos of her family. She's denied this for 4 months until we all watched the video from the videographer that caught her literally saying, "The bride said that she wants you to take the pictures of our families." So the photographer missed a good 20 minutes of the reception to take pictures of her and her family, and then came to us and was like, "Hey, we didn't discuss this," and tells me what the sister-in-law said. I went to her and she denied it all and said, "Oh, the photographer told us that she wanted to take pictures of the family members." Although it was only her and her family, which we weren't on good terms with anyway, they weren't even invited. So months later we were sitting around watching footage, and just like a scene from The Office, you see and hear with perfect clarity, "Oh, the bride wants you to take pictures of the families, not the reception. We're ready when you are." And the sister-in-law was sitting in the corner of the room and stomped her way to the door and slammed it as she left. A number of years ago, in my early 20s, I went to my cousin's wedding. My father asked me to dance, and it was going quite well until he asked to dip me. I said no. I was pretty big at the time and figured he couldn't support my weight and would drop me. He was rather disappointed and the dance ended soon after. About 3 dances later, I hear him calling my name across the dance floor. I look up and he's gleefully dancing with my mother and shouts, "Hey Bethany, this is how you dip someone," and promptly dips my mother and drops her straight onto the floor. All proudly caught on video and still referenced at every family wedding to this day. I've filmed dozens of weddings. I put a wireless mic on the groom in a lot of cases, so I get everything he mutters before, during, and after the ceremony. Most of my cutting was audio related. Lots of guys' buddies telling them they have a chance to run, serious or not. My favorite, though, was walking down the aisle after the ceremony and the groom whispers to the bride, "We're getting it on as soon as we leave this church." And the bride gave him this hilarious look, and they were basically jogging out of the church. And everything the guests filmed on the video guestbook was delivered, good or bad. Definitely had a drunk aunt go on a 15-minute tirade once, and lots of raunchy stories from drunk friends of the bride and groom, but nothing that stands out as too WTF. We made the mistake of deciding to set ours up ourselves on a tripod in the rear of the chapel and just letting it roll. The plan would have been brilliant if not for the fact that it got bumped when someone walked past, and was instead filming a nice, solid shot of one of the uncles fighting a particularly stubborn wedgie for way too long. He turns up plastered to anything from a christening to Christmas carols. Luckily, an aunt helped fix the camera. She noticed it and adjusted it eventually. Filming the father of the bride speech, he mumbled his way through it, and the guest in front of me said, "Well, that was frickin' crap," and only then remembered I was behind him filming and sheepishly looked around into the camera. At a friend's wedding, the videographer was filming a beautiful moment where the bride's sister, brother, and mother were dancing together. Near the end of the dance, her father came and stood behind the videographer and said, "This would be a beautiful picture if that B word wasn't in it." Him and the bride's mother weren't on the best of terms after their divorce. Not me, but my buddy was the videographer for a wedding. During the ceremony, they had candles lining the aisle, and the mother of the bride decided to get closer so she could get a better picture. While she was taking photos, she started walking backwards. Well, she walked backwards right into one of the candle holders and knocked it over right into someone's lap. Commence chaos. The guy jumps up, trying to put out the fire that's now in his lap, and his wife starts screaming at the women. Took about 20 minutes to get everything calmed down, and the marriage went off without a hitch afterwards. And yes, it was all caught on camera. The bride insisted it be cut out at the final video, so my buddy put it on a separate tape for us all to laugh at later. My husband filmed at my sister's wedding, and we got a lovely shot of a page boy taking a tinkle in the bushes during the outdoor photos. My cousin is a professional videographer and he did my wedding. I don't think he cut any of the audio because there's definitely a conversation about my husband and father going on a substance raid with some dogs after the wedding. FYI, they're both accountants and neither of them has a dog. One unforeseen side effect of having my husband mic'd up like that is that you can hear every conversation we had in our receiving line. I really love that part because a whole bunch of people died shortly after our wedding, and that was the last we saw of them. What? That was a right turn that the narrator wasn't expecting, and it leaves so many questions. Were they all old and died of natural causes? Did the hotel most of the guests were staying at burn down? Sorry, I know it's not funny, but wow, was the food undercooked? I guess we'll never know. Vaguely related, my aunt did the whole disposable cameras on tables thing, along with a professional team, and she got quite a few pictures of gentlemen's downstairs areas. We had a teenage creeper use our disposable cameras. He was taking stalker-like photos of these 3 teenage girls. We had several cameras worth of these girls, from afar and never looking at the photographer. I don't even know why he did it. He was never going to keep the pictures. We did this about 15 years ago at our wedding. Most of the cameras came back with fun shots, but the most memorable one was one that lovingly documented every inch of a fire extinguisher near one of the tables. Like, they set up shots with dramatic lighting, came at it from skewed angles, and must have done a full photo shoot. I don't know where these pictures are now. They reflected dedication to an apparently otherwise unsung hero of weddings. At my brother's, they specified no Johnsons on their disposable cameras, and they got an entire camera full of women's bare chests instead. The funniest thing to get caught on camera during a wedding. We were in Jamaica and a couple was getting married on a crowded resort beach. A large drunk guy waded into the water and went directly behind the bride and groom, like 10 feet back. He keeps trying to get onto one of those floating things anchored in the water and falling off again and again. The guests and people around are just watching this guy try to hold his drink, falling all over the place, floating around. It was hilarious and really embarrassing to watch. When we were at my cousin's wedding, my mother fell a total of 3 times. All 3 times, my dad, me, or one of the other 2 siblings weren't around, so we didn't really believe she kept tripping over her dress. That was until the last day when she had a bruise the size of Eurasia on her thigh. We were left scratching our heads like, how? And then the video for the wedding came out, along with the bloopers. In the bloopers, you can see my mother hopping around with her friend and doing bad Irish dancing when she lands, catches the hem of her dress, skids and falls backwards over said friend before baiting herself off the floor. Through the tears, I felt kinda bad for her. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below, and subscribe. Happened to my parents at their wedding and didn't get removed from the video. When they got out of their limo, some kid on a bike came up to them and yelled, "Get the frick out of here, you don't belong here." The kid must have been only 7 or 8 and the wedding was in my mum's hometown. I don't think we took ours out of the video because it was so funny. A Catholic wedding, drinking of the wine at communion. There was quite a bit of wine left after everyone went though. Most times I've seen the priest just finish it off. For some reason, this guy wants the parishioners to finish it, but everyone is having a hard time figuring out what he wants. He wants everyone to go through again and nobody gets it. My brother reaches over, takes the chalice, and pounds the remaining wine. Lays it back on the altar. My mum filmed weddings for a long time. Once, the groom was so drunk he could barely dance with his new wife. He was stumbling around, groping his new wife, and even grabbing her butt and thrusting. Super inappropriate bride and groom dance. The bride was so embarrassed. She was just trying to settle him down with no success. This was obviously in front of all the family and guests. My mum made me watch as a lesson in self-control, respect, and humiliation. Mine was my wedding, and we didn't have it removed, nor would we have, but the camera didn't pick up the audio. So when you look at the video, you see us making our vows, then the whole wedding party laughing, and then it continues. What happened was the ring bearer, a little boy of 3 or 4, during the vows where I'm asked, "Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" And this kid says, not quietly, "You mean he doesn't have to marry her?" It just blew his mind that a guy would willingly marry a girl. I used to videotape weddings for a few years. The funniest thing I saw was during a dollar dance, like the honeymoon dance, and a guest went to dance with the bride, gave her a $20 bill and asked for change. At another wedding, they had little bottles of bubbles instead of rice so that guests could blow bubbles on the couple as they left the church. One boy, about 10, would take a mouthful of bubbles and blow it out instead of using the Little Dipper. He made better bubbles than anyone. My dad used to videotape and photograph weddings when I was a kid, including my cousin's wedding. My cousin and I have an age gap. I was 3 at his wedding. My dad was photographing things and my mum was acting as his assistant, and no one was watching me. So, naturally, I found my way to the pretty cake, and very uncharacteristically of me, even as a small child, I walked right up and swiped a fistful of it before it was cut. My mum was frantically trying to cover it up when my cousin saw, and he was a good sport about it. Didn't really matter in the end anyway. My cousin was a Marine at the time, and one of his superiors was the one to cut the cake. He sliced it in half with a broadsword. No one cared about my sideswipe in the end. This does beg the question of whether this last guy was meant to cut the cake with his sword or not. It's kind of left open as to whether this was a spur-of-the-moment thing. Maybe he got really blotto and decided to vanquish this tiny rival bride and groom for them. My dad makes these videos. The fashion for ludicrous choreographed dances was at its height. The bride had forced her reluctant groom to dance classes, dancing to "I've Had the Time of My Life." So, their big moment arrived, and the room collapsed into laughter. The first 2 verses were just them facing each other about 6 feet apart, swaying and clicking their fingers. As the song reaches its climax, she was supposed to run and leap into his arms. They didn't get that far. The bride ran off in tears. My dad had to calm her down and then make an announcement to the room that they must let them have their moment. They did the dance again, and nobody spoke of it afterwards. My dad is into photography as a hobby. He has a bunch of expensive cameras and loves shooting in all kinds of settings, so he volunteered to be a photographer at one of his co-workers' weddings. They had an actual professional photographer there as well, but decided to let my dad get in on the action since he takes a damn good photo. He was snapping random shots all night and took a nice photo of the bride and groom dancing with some other couples. There were tables in the background of the photo and people eating on said tables. There, in the far back center, was a man and a woman sitting at one of the tables. In the woman's hand was the man's Johnson. I guess she thought she'd be able to service him while everyone else was distracted with alcohol and dancing. Both of them have straight faces and you couldn't tell that anything was going on. There were background characters in the shot, so it wasn't noticeable if you weren't looking for it. My dad caught this when he was editing the photos and decided to just darken the backgrounds in a way that you couldn't see this guy's junk in his wife and girlfriend or random drunk woman's hand. He didn't delete it because it was a really good photo of the bride and groom and he really wanted to send it to his coworker. He never told the coworker about the whole eggplant part, and I believe the couple has the photo in their collection of framed wedding photos. So I was actually the photographer and a buddy of mine was doing video, so this is a bit secondhand. We're standing with the groom at the end of a long walkway, getting ready to do their first look. We're bantering at this point, talking about our dogs and life and whatnot, when we hear a faint but distinct moan. You see, we were standing in the hotel's garden and there were rooms all around us. A U-shaped hotel, basically, and some couple on the left side of the U was having themselves a grand time. Anyway, we chuckled a bit and I asked my buddy, you're not going to have any of this audio in there, right? And my buddy laughs and says, well, not anymore. Just then, the bride enters the garden from the base of the U. So we're supposed to capture this super romantic moment. Meanwhile, two people are going at it like it might be their last opportunity to do so. The woman sounded like she was enjoying herself because each moan got progressively louder. We figured they had to be closer to the tip of the U because the bride didn't seem to notice as she approached. Thankfully, the noise stopped when she made it to the groom and they had their cute little moment uninterrupted. Fast forward a few months, and they're coming into the studio to pick up their video. They watch the quick cut and are very pleased, but then the bride asks us a question we didn't expect. Hey, did you guys get any audio from that couple having loud whoopee? Of course she heard it. How couldn't she? None of us knew she was aware of it because she had played it off so perfectly. Probably for the sake of the video. My buddy went to his editing station and quickly threw together a version of their first look with the original audio, complete with a ding counter for each audible moan. They watched it, laughed hysterically, and thanked us for keeping it. So while it was removed from the cutesy version of the video, the couple was really glad to have it to keep in their personal funny cut. Honestly, good on them for enjoying the memory. I know a lot of bride and groomzillas who would let something like that ruin the memory of the entire day for them. Personally, I would have found it hilarious. Used to be a video guy in the 80s and 90s. Shot probably around 500 weddings, I'd guess, so there were lots of things that had to be edited out. Some of the more memorable ones were the time the brother of the groom stripped completely undressed on the dance floor in full view of everyone, the time when giving a congratulatory interview on camera, the very drunk bridesmaid started deep-throating the microphone, many wardrobe malfunctions, like you'd be surprised at how often chests pop out of dresses, especially during the bouquet toss. Several fistfights and pushing and screaming matches. The mother of the bride screaming at the best man during his toast. In this case, she was furious about something. She wound up walking up to him and spitting in his face. So that was fun. The time the groomsman wrote, "I'm screwed" on the bottom of the groom shoes with a white marker or something. Every time he kneeled down in church, the whole place could see it. The father of the groom having a heart attack on the dance floor at the reception. A woman at another reception slicing her foot wide open on some broken glass, blood spurting everywhere, getting all over the bride's dress as well, and the table that held the wedding cake collapsing when they were cutting it. It fell all over the bride and groom. The bride was hysterically crying, and there were more, believe me. In my wife and I's wedding video, we were watching it a few weeks post-wedding, and out of nowhere there's this guy I've never seen before just standing there, holding up a greeting card with an undressed male model on it with his eggplant fully exposed. We were both watching the video like, what the frick is this crap? And when we pressed him, he said the mother of the bride's friend wanted to hold up the card for the camera and kept pestering him about it. The cameraman didn't want any part of it, but my mother-in-law told him to go along anyway. So yeah, there's full frontal undressed male in my wedding video. It was 2005 and it was in VHS. Too much hassle to remove. I didn't really care all that much. Who watches their wedding video more than a couple of times anyway? I wasn't a videographer, but was a DJ. My partner and I had set up the equipment and done our tests. When the wedding party and guests arrived, we did our final mic checks to make sure everything would be ready for the first dance. When we checked the wireless mic, I noticed there was a lot of static in it, so I asked my partner to walk around the venue while talking into the mic to see if I could get any idea what was going on. I put the microphone into cue and put on a pair of headphones to listen as he walked around. He started by saying test, 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 and then he would walk by a guy and go, ball bag, ball bag, ball bag, and then go by a woman and say chest, 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 and pretty soon he was just walking around the banquet hall saying, ball bag, chest, ball bag, chest, chest. He does this around the entire perimeter of the facility until he gets back to me. When he got back, I told him that there was too much static and we would just need to switch to the wired mic. Once we got things switched over, I decided to work on the wireless a little more, so I turned off the transmitter and just listened to the static from the receiver. After 30 seconds or so, I started to pick out voices and thought to myself, oh crap. And I started looking around, and sure enough, there's the videographer talking to his partner, and their mouths match up with the voices I'm hearing. Turns out, his wireless mic was on the same frequency as ours, so my partner possibly caused chest, chest, ball bag, to be recorded on this couple's tape of their cherished memories. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.